Hi everybody, welcome back to another video of mine. Today I thought we'd do something a little different. What I want to do today is show you a way that you can create a full game without the need of any IDE, framework, library, compiler, nothing of that sort. All you need is a browser and some vanilla JavaScript. That's it. It doesn't matter what operating system you're using. It doesn't matter if you have a machine that is maybe not as powerful. Well, maybe it shouldn't be an ancient typewriter from the last century, but it doesn't really matter what you're using. All you need is a browser. And I'm going to use Google Chrome for that, but you may as well use Firefox, Edge, or whatever browser you prefer. So let me show you what the final product, so to speak, will look like. So this is JSFiddle.net. It's a website that lets you, well, fiddle or play around with JavaScript, HTML and CSS, stuff like that, without the need of hosting anything locally, installing anything. It's just a web-based application that lets you play with JavaScript. And so yeah, this is what we're going to create right here. Let me start the game. And it's a clone of an old-fashioned game that we all know, a tennis-like game. Let me start it up. And of course, I control the left pedal, the red one. The blue pedal is controlled by a very, very simple AI that will try to beat me. Let me just avoid the ball right here. Let him score some points. It has some sound effects going on, which are freely available. Yeah, very simple game. I mean, it doesn't look like much, of course, but we just want to keep it simple. And yeah, you don't need anything for this. All you need is a mouse. And the computer won. Well, I seem to be really bad at this game. But yeah, this is what we're going to create. Hope you're going to join me. All right, so let's start with a clean slate here. First of all, what I recommend you to do, it's not required, but I recommend it, is that you create an account with JSFiddle.net. So you go to JSFiddle.net, and what you will see will look something like this. You have 4 windows here, and there's a sign-in button in the upper right corner. I'm currently logged in, so it's not going to show me the option to register. But I recommend you to create an account, because what that will allow you to do is to save your creation, your project, to your account. So you can come back at it at any point. Also, in the process of writing JavaScript, sometimes you may, well, end up with an infinite loop, or the application crashes for some reason because you're not done yet with the code. Because JSFiddle will try to run your code from time to time, stuff like that, and it may cause some, well, instability. So it's really good if you just save regularly, save often, and with an account, it's just going to be much more manageable and much easier to handle. But it's not required. You may as well just keep some backup in like a notepad file or whatever. It's totally up to you, but I recommend you create an account. Okay, so let's just get familiar with JSFiddle really quick here. It's really nothing special. It's just like regular basic web development. We can add some HTML here. For example, let's add like a headline here. And then I can run this, and we will see the result rendered right here. We can style this using CSS. Let's say, I don't know, color blue. Run. And it's, well, the difference isn't, well, let's maybe make it red. Run. And there you go. And we can add JavaScript, Let's log something to the console here. Hello there. Run. And there's a console down here. If you click it, you will see hello there. You can also use JavaScript to manipulate the DOM, the HTML of the finished website. Let's go ahead here and assign an ID to this. And then go document, get element by ID, headline, style, display equals none. And that should hide the headline here. Yep, it's gone. So yeah, very basic web development. You can also actually import JavaScript libraries here, but we don't want to do that. As you can see here, it says pure JS, vanilla JavaScript. No libraries, nothing. And yeah, let's get started. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is add a title here. I'm just going to call it tennis tutorial or whatever, and I'm going to save it to my account. And now what we need is an HTML canvas. In HTML5, an element was introduced named canvas, which we can use to, well, render stuff to it. We can render stuff to it using other HTML tags or using a JavaScript API. And that's what we're going to use to render our game. So I'm going to add a canvas element here. I'm going to assign a ID to it, which is just canvas. And I'm going to set the width to 640 and the height to 320. And we don't need to, and we can directly close that element, that HTML tag here, the canvas tag, like this. And now if I run, there will be no difference because we can't see the canvas. It's also white, it doesn't have a different color. So what we're going to do here is style that canvas using the ID selector. And let's say the background is dark green, like a tennis court. And that's it for now. Let's run. And there we go. That'll be our game screen, so to speak. Now, we're going to use object-oriented JavaScript. So we're going to work with classes, methods, properties, good old object-oriented programming. The first thing we're going to need is a class that describes our game. So yeah, let's go ahead and create a class here named tennis game. And this class is going to need a constructor. So and what the constructor takes as an argument is the actual canvas element, so that it knows what to render the game components to. I'm going to store this canvas element in a field. And JavaScript doesn't really support the concept of access modifiers. It doesn't, you can't make a field private or protected or public or whatever. They're all public by default. And a convention, a popular convention to show that a field is supposed to be private is to prefix it with an underscore. So this canvas field here is supposed to be private. It's not supposed to be directly accessed from the outside of this class. Yeah, so let's see. We also need a run method to start the game. And what the run method will do is basically, let me just go here, add a run method. And what it needs to do is call the setInterval function, JavaScript function. And what this function does is it calls a specified function over and over again in a specified interval. And the interval length will basically be our frame rate. So we want to, at 60 frames per second, for example, we want to call some function repeatedly. And actually for the frame rate, we're going to define a constant. And actually we're going to need a bunch of constants. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a constant object because JavaScript allows that. I'm going to call it game settings. And that's just going to be an object here. And there, let's see. Let's define a property for this object called target FPS and assign the value 60. And now we can also add another property here, which actually is like a method. So a property which is actually a function which returns, whoops, 1 divided by the target FPS, which will give us the time in seconds of the length in seconds, basically, of a frame. And that will be our interval length here. So let me pass game. What did I name it? Game settings? Yes, game settings. Get interval length. But the second parameter here of the set interval function, it actually takes the interval length in milliseconds. And we pass it here in seconds. So we have to multiply that by 1000. And now here we can add some code here that will be called repeatedly at our specified frame rate. So let's add a method here, a private method, meaning it will start with an underscore. That will be called repeatedly. And for now, I'm not going to do anything here, but here I'm going to call this update method. And the problem is here that I can't use this. I can't use this keyword here because this has another meaning inside of this function. It no longer points to this instance of tennis game. And that's because I switched the scope here from the run method of the tennis game class to this anonymous function. And now this, well, the value of this depends on how this function is called. And a way around this is to declare a variable here to which we assign the value of this, and then we're going to use that variable, that local variable named that. Okay, but actually in the update method, we're going to need an argument, which I'm going to call delta time, which will store the amount of time in seconds that that one frame took. And we're going to need that to make the game frame rate independent, to basically scale the movement speed of the objects and things like that. Here I have to pass this delta time value now, and we can easily calculate that. Let's declare a variable here named update time, and there's a date class here in JavaScript with a method now, which gives us the current time. And then we can calculate delta time. like this. Well, previous update time hasn't been declared yet. What we're going to do is we always remember the previous time before we actually after we update, we're going to remember the last time that it was updated. And obviously I still need to declare this variable. So I'm going to go outside of the scope of this function here. So we're going to get the current timestamp, which is basically like a giant integer. Then use this timestamp and subtract the previous timestamp from the previous update, from the previous call to the update method, and divide that by 1,000. Because like I said, we have to convert between seconds and milliseconds, and that will give us the delta time here, and I will pass that to the update method. So yeah, I guess maybe in the update method for now, I will just log something to the console to test if the update loop is working properly. Maybe, go something like this and log the delta time to the console, something like that. Right. So now we need a way for us to actually call this run method and start the game. So let's create a button here in the HTML, which we can use to start the game. So use the button element. I'm going to assign a CSS class to it named btn. And I'm going to assign an ID. Let's call it button start. It's going to be of type button. And there's an attribute named onClick. And here I can add some JavaScript that should be executed once the button is clicked. And what we want to do is call a function, which I'm going to define in a second, called startGame. And then here I can add the text that should be displayed on the button, startGame. And down here, like I said, I'm going to add a function. It's just going to be a global function. And it's going to be called startGame. And what it will do is actually call the run method of our tennis game class. But first we need an actual instance of this class. So let's go here, add a global variable. And we still need to pass the canvas. Remember, the tennis game, the constructor of the tennis game class takes the canvas as its single parameter. So we need to pass that. How do we get it? Well, that's simple. Maybe let's go all the way up here. Sorry for jumping back and forth here, but we need this canvas to pass it to the constructor. So I'm going to add a constant here, name it canvas. And we can simply get that using the document, which has a method named getElementById. And now I can actually get the canvas element using the ID that I assigned here, canvas. And now this constant named canvas holds a reference to this canvas element. And now I can pass it here to the constructor. There we go. And now we can actually simply call the run method. So let's say game.run. And let me save this. And if we've done everything correctly, we should now be able to run the game. And well, currently it doesn't really do anything. It seems like I made a mistake here somewhere. Oh no, I think it just tried to run the code earlier when the code wasn't finished, I think. Let's clear the console. Okay. It should be fine. Maybe I should increase the size of this a little bit so you can see it better. Sorry for that. This should be fine, I think. I'm going to add a link in the description where you can see the full source code, so don't worry about that. So we get the canvas here. We created an object that holds some constants here, and it has a method for returning the length of a frame or duration of a frame. And now, actually, if I click the Start Game button, we should see in the console that it keeps logging this text here, updating, and the delta time. And the delta time, if we've done everything correctly, should be around 0.16, if I'm not mistaken. Start game. We made a mistake somewhere. Yeah, sorry, I made a typo here. That's why it can't find this. It says inverval, which obviously is not correct. Sorry about that. It should, of course, get interval length. So it matches the property name here. Clear the console again. And save again. Yeah, and after clicking run here, the code technically runs, but we need to, of course, click our button here that we implemented, start game, and there we go. It keeps repeatedly calling the update method and logging the delta time, which, like I said, is around 0.016. So that's perfect. It's 60 frames per second. Let me minimize this. And actually, I don't have a way to stop the game now, so it will keep updating here. So I'm going to save and just refresh the website here. Yeah, this is one of those, one of the reasons that I recommend that you create an account so you can just save and restore at any point. Okay, so now we have a basic game loop, and now we can build the actual game.